गणपति शारदा गुरुभ्यो नमः चरितं रघुनाथस्य शतकोटिप्रविस्तरम् एकैकमक्षरं पुंसां महापातकनाशनम्. Welcome to all for this session on Sri Manasa, in which all preparations are undergoing for the marriage of Shiva and Parvati. Whereas looking at their outward appearance, people are worried about what Shiva really is, which is known only to Parvati. On hearing the news, that very moment Himachala came to his house along with Narada and the seven seas. Then Narada reassured them all, narrating to them the past history of Uma. He said, Maina, hear my true words. Your daughter is none else than Bhavani, the eternal consort of Shiva. Mother of the universe, she is the unborn and imperishable divine energy who has no beginning. She is Shambhu's inseparable half. He creates, maintains, and then dissolves the universe and assumes the semblance of a human form of her own will. For she was born in the house of Daksha, Sati was her name, and charming was her form. Even in that incarnation, Sati was married with Shankara. The story is well known throughout the world. One day, while she was returning home with Shiva, she beheld Sri Rama, who is a son, as it were, to the lotus like rays of Raghu. Bewildered by his sight, she did not listen to Shiva's advice and was beguiled into assuming the disguise of Sita. Shankara repudiated her because she had offended him by assuming the disguise of Sita. Separated from Hara, she then visited the sacrifice undertaken by her father and burned herself in the fire of yoga there. Now reborn in your house, she has undergone terrible penance for the sake of her Lord. Knowing this, give up all doubt. Girija, your daughter, is ever beloved of Shankara. When they heard Narada's explanation, the sadness of all was dispersed. In a trice, the news spread from house to house throughout the city. Then Maina and her consort Himavan rejoiced and bowed at Parvati's feet again and again. All the citizens, including men, women, and children, young men as well as elderly people, were immensely delighted. Festive songs began to be sung in the city. Vases of gold of every pattern were displayed by all. Dishes of various kinds were prepared in accordance with the processes given in gastrological works. Is it ever possible to describe the varieties of dishes prepared in the house where lived Mother Bhavani? Himachala respectfully summoned all the members of the bridegroom's party, including Vishnu, Brahma, and other gods of all classes. The dinner guests sat in many rows, and expert cooks began to serve. Finding the gods dining, batches of women began to banter and rail at them in pleasant strains. Charming women railed in sweet strains and poured innuendos. The gods felt much amused to hear them and dined for an unusually long time. The joy that swelled at the dinner cannot be described even with millions of tongues. Having been served with water for rinsing their mouths at the end of the dinner, they were given betel leaves and then they returned to their respective lodgings. The seven sages called once more and read out to Himavan the note recording a time fixed for the wedding, and perceiving that the hour had arrived, the latter sent for the gods. Himavan politely sent for all the gods and assigned an appropriate seat to each of them. An altar was prepared in accordance with the Vedic ritual, and women chanted charming festival strains. A divinely beautiful throne with the images of a pair of lions was for its arms was placed on the altar, being a handiwork of the Creator Himself. It beggared description. Bowing his head to the Brahmanas and calling to his mind his own master, the Lord of Raghus, Shiva took his seat on the throne. The great sages then sent for Uma, who was brought in by her girl companions, richly adorned. All the gods were enraptured at her beauty. What poet in the world could describe such loveliness? Recognizing in her the mother of the universe and spouse of Shiva, the divinities mentally bowed to her. The perfection of beauty that Bhavani was could not be adequately prized even with millions of tongues. The superb beauty of the Mother of the Universe could not be described even with the millions of tongues. When even the Vedas, Shesha, the serpent god, and Sharada, the goddess of learning, shrink abashed, of what account is the dull witted Tulasi? Thus says the saint Tulasi in a very humble way. Mother Bhavani, the mine of beauty, walked to the middle of the pavilion where Shiva was. Out of shyness, she could not gaze on her Lord's lotus feet, although her heart was fixed thereon like a bee. At the direction of the sages, Shambhu and Bhavani paid divine honors to Lord Ganapati. Let no one be puzzled to hear this, for one should bear in mind that gods have existed from time without beginning. Because most of us think that Ganapati, being the son of Shiva and Parvati, how he could exist at the time of their marriage. Because remember, as we remembered in the Ganesha Purana, Ganapati was existing all the time, and being the son of Shiva Parvati is basically one of his incarnation, because Ganapati himself is a manifested form of Brahma. The great sages had the nuptial ceremony performed in all its details as laid down in the Vedas, taking sacred kusha grass in their hand and holding the bride by her hand. The mountain king Himalaya made her over to Bhava or Shiva, knowing her to be his external consort. When the great Lord Shiva took the hand of the bride, all the great gods were glad at heart. The principal sages chanted the Vedic formulas, while the gods exclaimed, Hail, hail, all hail to Shankara. Musical instruments of various kinds were sounded, and flowers of different varieties were rained down from the heavens. The wedding of Hara and Girija was thus concluded. A spirit of rejoicing pervaded the whole universe. Men, servants, and maidservants, horses and chariots, elephants and cows, raiment and jewels, and various other articles, and even so cartloads of food grains and gold utensils were given as dowry, which was more than one could prescribe. Himachala gave presents of various kinds as dowry. Then, joining his palms, he said, I have nothing to give you, O Shankara. You have all your desires sated. He could say no more, and remaining clasping the latter's feet, ocean of mercy that Shiva is reassured his father in law in every possible way. Then Mena, with her heart overflowing with love, clasped his lotus feet and said, O Lord, Uma is dear to me as life. Take her as a maid servant of your house and forgive all her faults. Be pleased to grant this boon to me. Shambhu then comforted his mother in law in ways more than one, and she returned home bowing her head at his feet. The mother then sent for Uma and taking her into her lap gave her the following excellent advice. Ever adore the feet of Shankara. This sums up the duty of a life, duty of a wife. Her husband is her deity. There is no other God for her. As she spoke these words, her eyes filled with tears, and she pressed the girl to her bosom. Why has God created woman in this world? One who is subordinate on others can never dream of happiness. The mother was overwhelmed with emotion, but knowing as she did that it was not an opportune time for betraying one's weakness, she recovered herself. Maina met Parvati again and again and fell down clasping the girl's feet. Her supreme love was beyond all words. Bidding adieu to all the ladies, Bhavani ran and clung to her mother's breast once again. Taking leave of her mother once again, Bhavani departed. Everyone uttered appropriate blessings to her. She often turned back to have a look at her mother. Her girl companions then took her to Shiva. Having gratified all beggars, Shiva proceeded to his home at Mount Kailasa with Uma. All the divinities delightfully rained down flowers, and kettle drums produced a charming sound in the heavens. Himavan then accompanied Shiva in order to see him off with great affection. Shiva, however, sent him back, consoling him in various ways. The mountain king returned home at once and summoned all other mountains and lakes. Himavan greeted them with due attention, gifts, polite words, and great honor, and allowed them all to depart. No sooner had Shambhu reached Mount Kailasa than all the gods returned to their respective realms. Shambhu and Bhavani are the parents of the universe, hence I refrained from portraying their amorous sports, indulging in luxuries and enjoyments of every various kinds. The divine pair lived on Mount Kailasa along with their attendants. Hara and Girija enjoyed some new delight every day. In this way, a considerable time elapsed. Thereafter, there was born to them a boy with 6 heads who later on killed the demon Taraka in battle. The story of Shanmuka means the one who having the six-headed, that means a six-headed deity, is well known in the Vedas, Tantras, and Puranas, and the entire world knows about that. The tale of the birth, exploits, glory, and surpassing strength of Shanmuka is known to the whole world. That is why I have briefly touched the narrative of Shiva's son. Men and women who narrate or sing this story of the wedding of Uma and Shambhu shall ever rejoice in their auspicious undertaking as well as during festive occasions such as wedding, etc. The exploits of Girija's Lord are illimitable like the ocean, even the Vedas cannot reach their end. Then, how then can Tulsi a most dull witted clown, succeed in describing them? Bharadwaja was much delighted to hear the sweet and charming story of Shambhu's deeds. His passion for hearing the story grew to be inordinate. Tears rushed to his eyes, and the hair on his body bristled with joy. Overpowered with emotion, he could not utter a word. The enlightened sage Yajnavalkya was delighted to see the condition of Bharadwaja. Best indeed is your birth, O great sage, he said. To you, the Lord of Gauri is dear as life. Those who love not Shiva's lotus feet cannot even dream of pleasing Rama. A guileless love for Shiva's feet is the surest sign of a devotee of Rama who is so faithful to the Lord of Raghus as Shiva, who renounced a sinless wife like Sati and demonstrated ideal devotion to Rama by his pledge of unswerving fidelity. Brother, whom does Rama hold so dear as Shiva? Having begun by recounting the deeds of Shiva, I have come to know your secret. You are indeed a faithful servant of Rama, free from all impurities. Thus said Yagnavalkya to Bharadwaja, who is hearing to this story. I have come to know your virtues and disposition. Listen, therefore, while I narrate the story of the Lord of Raghus. O sage, I cannot say how glad I am at this meeting with you today. O Lord of sages, the exploits of Sri Rama are much beyond measure. Even 1,000,000,000 Sheshas cannot recount them. Nevertheless, fixing my thoughts on the Lord who wields a bow in his hand and is the Lord of speech, I repeat the tale as I have heard it. Sharada, the goddess of speech, is like a puppet, while Sri Rama, the inner controller of all, is the master of the puppet show, who holds the strings in his hands. When he blesses a poet, knowing him to be a devotee, he causes the goddess to dance in the courtyard of his heart. To him, the benevolent Lord of Raghus, I bow and commence the recital of his fair virtues. Of all mountains, the most charming and the best is Kailasa, where Shiva and Uma eternally dwell. Hosts of siddhas, ascetics, and yogis, as well as gods, kinnaras, and sages, all lucky souls reside there and adore Shiva, the root of all joy. Those who have their faces turned away from Hari and Hara and have no love for righteousness cannot even dream of going there to Kailasa. On the summit of that mountain exists a huge banyan tree which is ever young and is charming during all seasons. Fanned by cool, soft, and fragrant breezes, its shade is very refreshing. It is the favorite resort of Shiva, extolled by the Vedas. Once upon a time, the Lord betook himself beneath the tree and was much gladdened at heart to see it. Spreading his tiger skin on the ground with his own hands, the all merciful Shiva sat down casually, his body fair in hue as the jasmine and the moon and the conch shell long arms of inordinate length, a hermit's covering consisting of bark of trees wrapped around his loins, his feet resembling a pair of full blown red lotuses, and their toenails shedding a luster which dispelled the darkness of the devotee's heart, serpents and ashes serving as ornaments of the slayer of Tripura, and his countenance eclipsing the splendor even of the autumnal full moon. With his twisted coils of hair for a crown and the celestial stream, the Ganga adorning his head, eyes as big as a pair of lotuses, throat dark with poison, and with the crescent shining on his brow, the Lord looked like a veritable mine of beauty. Thus, the story regarding the marriage of Shiva and Parvati has ended, and finally, Shiva Parvati got together. They settled at Kailasa, and one day, while Shiva was resting under the banyan tree, as we see in the next chapter, Parvati will approach him, continuing her doubt that rose in her previous life related to Sri Ramachandra, and then Shiva begins the story of Ramacharita Manasa. Namaste Sharada Devi, Kashmira Puramasini, Swamaham Prarthaye Nityam, Vidya Danancha Dehime. Goodbye.
श्रीरामचन्द्र कृपाल भज मन हरण भव भय दारुणं श्रीरामचन्द्र कृपाल भज मन हरण भव भय दारुणं श्रीराम 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 श्रीराम